G'day friends, welcome to today's YouTube video. My name is James, welcome back to my channel, welcome if you're new. Today I have my Hobonichi 5 years, I feel like I'm going cross-eyed. If I've gone cross-eyed in any point in the last 10 seconds, I'm so sorry. I don't know why. The first time it happened I was like, did I just go cross-eyed? Keep talking, and then it happened again. I feel like maybe it didn't happen at all and now I've caught your attention. Don't worry, it's my own issues. I think I'm tired. My 5-year Hobonichi Techo. It's from 2019 to 2023, so current year. You might have seen videos on YouTube of me finishing this journal. Today I'm combining that effort with the last 5 years, which is a video series I started on Playtest Patreon 3. Just on that. That is all bundled up and put on my Teachable now, and that Daisy Style Workshop, that return student coupon that all of my students got emailed, if you didn't, just email me, I'll get you that coupon. That is valid for the Playtest Patreon 3 bundle as well. There's a lot of other workshops on there. So it does expire at the end of June. So if you want to save some dollars, use it before the end of June. And you can use it multiple times. So you can get your coupon off the Daisy Style Workshop. You can get it off the Playtest Patreon bundle and Virtual Voyage 2 if you want. Like, you can use it multiple times. It will just expire by the end of June though. So you got about a week to use it. That's info on that, just in case you want it. If you don't know what Playtest Patreon 3 is, it's basically just 2 or 3 month stints that I do on Patreon to playtest things, to see if I want to, do something and understand it with an audience before I put it on a workshop, or do something with products. We did subscription boxes in there, or maybe I wanted to test out video series like this. Originally, I wanted to test out the last 5 years as a video series because it was a very simple premise. I just grab my journal, I go to a specific spread, and I read out the same entry. Well, I read out all 5 entries for the same day. So you can kind of see where I was in 2019 and the different experiences I've had every year since. Sometimes it reveals a very interesting pattern of behavior. Sometimes I end up writing the same thing on the same day over multiple years. It's very bizarre. And then other times it just gives me a good chance to talk about stories that I might not have talked about before, or be a bit more open and candid and casual and transparent about things that I have struggled to talk about before. I did ultimately want to test it in Patreon because it's a very focused group behind that paywall. It's not so public. And so I feel like, it's public to an extent, but because it's behind there, it's not as vulnerable to put it out on YouTube, right? So I felt like it would be a good place to talk about some of the topics I knew that were going to come up, because this is ultimately a personal account of my life every day, right? And so it can be very revealing of certain patterns of behavior. It can be very revealing when I'm reading entries and they seem very simple, but I know they're coded because underneath that is a very deeply rooted personal human experience that I might not want to talk about. So I do protect privacy for myself, for the things that I need to keep private for me. But ultimately, I do like to be very candid with you. I just like to do it in a way that is a bit more controlled than, just journaling and talking about my deepest, darkest fears. So this series was kind of my answer to that, and I wanted to see how I felt about it in Playtest Patreon 3 first. So if you're in Playtest Patreon 3, you would have seen these videos. They are available in the bundle. I think the first one we ended up talking about was a lot of the entries had to do with weight, my body, and how that was as a dancer, and my thoughts about that. That was very eye-opening for me. We had talked about my design team experience with Jane Davenport. We talked about I think in another episode we did that. In another episode we talked about why Steve and I had left our church and the circumstances surrounding that, and that was very difficult, but I'd felt like that was just really weighing on me, and I really needed to share that story, because a lot of the time I do share stories on here that, that have follow-ups, or they have other stories that are connected to them, but if there's a missing piece, it won't make any sense to suddenly tell the next part of that story and then be like, whoa, what happened in there? And it's like, oh, it's fine, we just left the church because bad things happened. Like, but don't worry about that story, just listen to the next part. I mean, that's crazy. People don't like that. People don't like, being vague or feeling like parts of the story are missing. So people, and when I say people, me, I don't like watching that. I don't like watching people who don't seem authentic, or just seem like they're putting bits out there but don't want to actually share what's going on. Like, I can't stand if someone's out on Instagram stories, and yes, I watch everyone's Instagram stories. If someone's out there and they put like a little sad face over it, like, why are you sad? I have to know. I know it's none of my business. I know I have no right to know, but you put the sad face up there. Now I'm deadly curious about, and this is so bad of me, but I'm gonna admit it, if anyone says like, oh, so-and-so passed away. And I've had this happen with friends too, like people I've known, so-and-so has passed away, and then they say nothing about how it happened. I go on a 4-day search. Like, I am CIA all over the internet trying to figure out and piece together the circumstances that led to that person's death. Why? For people I don't even know, but like, especially people I do know, that was tragic, because I'm like, what happened? But I also, like, their friends, I don't know their family like that, and I don't think they would know who I was, but it's a nightmare. You have to say it. You have to tell me why. Me specifically. I know other people are a lot more gracious. That can't be me. It could never be me. I'm nosy. So, yeah. So anyway, it's, fair's fair. If I'm going to go and say that, I can't be a hypocrite. I have to tell you my stories too. But for the most part, I did, and this is an interesting realization I had a while ago, I was actually protecting a lot of people's reputation, and I was also protecting a lot of people's thoughts about certain people. I didn't want to be the person to reveal that your favorite is not a nice person behind the scenes. I don't want to be, because look, realistically, everyone has done something you don't agree with. No one is perfect. So ultimately, you're always, I mean, you will probably, if you know someone long enough, you'll find that out about them. And on the internet, it becomes a crazy place where, like, I mean, it's the Wild West out here. So you don't want those things to happen. But at the same time, like, there were stories I was just not telling because I was legitimately protecting someone's reputation. When I sat there and looked at it, I was like, why am I doing that? If this person wanted to say this and they wanted to do this, they've got to stand behind it. I mean, I know it's a hard thing to do, and I certainly wouldn't want to do it either. I don't think anyone wants to have to stand behind the things they've done before, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if someone's sharing their story and there's truth to it, then it is what it is. My family have always been, if it's the truth, you can do something with it. Like, you can use it to move to the next point. You may not like it, but at least if it's the truth, you can handle that. If it's fake, if it's a lie, it's hollow. You can't do anything with it. You can't use that to get to somewhere else. It's always going to be a really weak foundation of nothing. But if it's the truth, you can use that. But internet's also a crazy place, and you don't want to have to share everything online. So I think we all know that. That's where I'm at, just in case you don't know where my stance is on all of that. Bit of context before we go into this, because there's going to be things in here that I won't want to have to tell you. Like, I don't want to have to explain what the coded message is. I don't want you to know that my towel is on the back of my chair for some reason. What a filthy person. Like, why is my washing down there? This is just going to be raw and real and vulnerable. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. But at the very least, I'm going to put my footage of me working on this journal in, so that you've got that to watch as well. So I'm not just going to be chatting to you. I think in the videos we did on Patreon, I was just hours of chatting, which is fun too. I love to chat. All right, we're at June 13th, and I'm going to go for 2019, which was a Thursday. I cooked. I never cook. My fave Moroccan lamb tagine. Yum. Not a lot going on there. I will just say, I know at that time I was a little depressed, and I don't have clinical depression or anything, but I do experience feelings of depression from time to time. 2019 was a bit of a difficult year. I've had a few difficult years since I've moved to the States. I had a bit of a difficult time transitioning into marriage, transitioning into being an immigrant, and like what that means for setting up your life again, and how to even adjust to living life as like an independent adult, even though I was married. Are you really independent? I don't know. Sure. I lived on cruise ships, or I lived in Japan, where everything was kind of done for me, and I didn't really have to think about anything. So I felt like I was having a lot of growing pains at 25, 26. By 2019, I feel like I was kind of in my rhythm, but I was also just struggling to know like what I should be doing and where I should be going. I really wanted to dance so badly. I wanted to dance ever since I stopped in 2015. It just wasn't working out. Like, it really wasn't working out. And by 2019, I think I was so disillusioned by all of that. I started getting overweight, and I started really not taking care of myself. I was so sedentary with how I was working at that point, and I'd really just given up on being active altogether, I think. And then 2020 hit, and it just kind of got worse from there. So yeah, 2019, those experiences, if I was feeling a little depressed, I think sometimes it would show up in my journal as very simple entries. I really tried to avoid writing "nothing happened today" because I really didn't like that. I felt like that was confirming that there was a problem, and I'm not trying to be unrealistic. Like, I'm not trying to delude myself into feeling better, but I really think it's important for me, when I feel depressed, to know that I can at least do something. Like something is achievable. I can still experience joy while I'm feeling depressed. I can still laugh while I'm feeling depressed. I can still put one foot in front of the other and do some simple tasks. Now, I don't actually cook a lot. I cook a lot now, but, well, define cooking. I assemble a lot of meals. I didn't really cook a lot before then, but my mum, when I got injured, when I went home, my mum was like, oh, I really want to do this weight loss. I think it's like the 12 weeks of weight loss plan or some stupid thing. It was from The Biggest Loser, Michelle Bridges. She came out with a book, a cookbook, and my mum was like, I want to do it because she is the biggest loser. And don't say, well, whatever, tell her I said that. She was saying that about me. We were always on a diet together ever since I was 8 years old. Did I tell you the story of my mum when we went to Christmas at church, and they brought all the kids up on stage and they were like, what did you get for Christmas? And my mum gave me this book, kind of like half as a joke, but I think she actually like did think I needed it. It was a book that said, Mom, I feel fat. It was American though, so it was spelled M-O-M, so it was Mom, I feel fat. And it was like kind of a joke, but I was also so young to be making that joke. It was really funny that she thought I would get it, because I did get it. This is also the same mother that taped Kath and Kim for me when I was 10 years old and be like, James, she's like, James, you would love this show. And I watched the first episode and I was like, I do love this show, but it's very inappropriate for a 10-year-old now that I will look back at it. Not inappropriate, but just like, who was I at 10 years old that I loved that? Anyway, so she gave me a book that said, Mum, I feel fat, and they asked all the kids on stage what they got, and I literally told the entire congregation that she gave me that book. She was mortified, and I was like, well, you gave it to me. Anyway, all of that to say, we've both been on diets since we've been 11 years old, and she thought, well, you can cook this stuff for me, and I cooked from it, and it was a great cookbook. I actually picked up a copy here, and I cooked that Moroccan lamb tagine for Steve because I loved it. I love the peas in it. And it's like a sweet potato thing. It's really nice. I love lamb. I love meat. I think a lot of Australians are big meat eaters. But yeah, I cooked it for Steve. He really enjoyed it, but I don't think he's a big lamb eater. And that's that on that. It was just kind of like the one little thing that I could accomplish that day that made me feel really good and that I could actually do something, which was important. But yeah, sometimes, like, what's so interesting about this 5-year journal is that you are checking in with yourself really often, like daily. Sometimes you miss a day, but you go back and reflect on that day, and then sometimes you can be even more introspective about it because some time has passed. You can settle with your thoughts a little bit more. But I think what was interesting is that once the years started stacking on top of each other, I could be really aware of patterns that would develop and ways that I would try to disguise something that was happening because I didn't want to admit it, or I didn't want to have to write it down. Some things I would code because I just didn't want anyone to know what was going on, but I did want to write it down. Other times I'd be very aware of like, I keep omitting this from these entries because I just don't want it to be true. And so I felt like I'd have to face those things. It's really interesting because you don't get up every day thinking, I'm gonna be really aware of everything I'm doing today. Like, I'm going to keep track of myself. I'm going to be very intentional with everything I do. I think a lot of people just get up and we have patterns of behavior and we exist in this routine and we just exist. We just do, which is not a bad thing. But when you look back on it over and over again, there are parts of my routine that I was just doing, and I felt like I don't need to be doing that. Or like, why can't I just change that routine to something else? Like, I'd be getting up and I would just force myself to sit down at my desk and do work, and I have the ability to set my own hours, but I just thought, well, it has to be 9 to 5 like everybody else, so do it. And it's not until you reflect on that over time where it's like, oh, I have the ability to choose. And even though you know that, sometimes you just don't think about it like that way, or you don't think, well, I should fix it, I should change it. So, you know, then I started going for walks whenever I felt like I could turn this off right now. If I just felt like, you know what, I need a break, I'll come back to it, turn this off, go for an hour walk, come back, feel completely different. I used to do that with Kath and Kim a lot, actually. If I felt like I was in a bad mood and I had to, you know, be happy on camera, I would go and watch Kath and Kim because it would completely switch my mood up, and then I'd come back. Obviously I'd be speaking really different, but so you can kind of tell when I'd use that trick. But yeah, things like that. I mean, the more I used my 5-year journal, I became very aware of my patterns, and I became very aware of things that I needed to address or things that I could change. It was just an interesting way to grow myself. I can't speak to all the mental health benefits because obviously I'm not a trained therapist. I'm not trained anything except a trained dancer. But I think for me, it's been very helpful in getting to understand myself on that deeper level. And could I have done that without the journal? Possibly. I don't really know. I mean, I don't have that experience to say. I know beforehand I was never really that interested. I just thought I am the way I am and that's going to be that. I do feel very differently about that now. So that was 2019. 2020, very interesting year for all of these entries. I have to say, it's great to look back at 2020 because as bad as a day I might have now, it never feels quite as bad as it was in 2020. It was a hard time to document as well. I understand a lot of people didn't want to document it or they found other things to do on their 5-year journal journey in 2020, but I am glad that I put a lot of it in there because it's such a great leveler right now to go back on that and be like, at least it is not 2020. And, you know, very thankful that we made it through. It's just interesting to read back. In 2020, I wrote Okayama Kobo Brunch and Virtual Voyage Work. So that was our first virtual voyage. Who knew that all these years later, I'd be embarking on Virtual Voyage 8, which I've got slated for August, by the way, just in case you're curious. And it's Burtonville 2. Yeah, that first virtual voyage, I had no idea what it was going to turn into. All I thought was, this is a crazy idea. I hope people understand it. And it's still a crazy idea, and I don't know if people really understand it yet, but we have a great virtual voyage community. It has been so much fun doing all of that and experiencing the different ways that we've done it since the beginning. I think I always just wanted it to be something that I would enjoy doing, so that was where I just put my focus and I just threw myself in wholeheartedly every single time. And it is such a big task to do, but it just feels so rewarding. I love looking at those journals back and just seeing the body of work from such an intensely concentrated time. Like, I think of it like cordial, where it's just concentrate, or, you know, you have like cold brew concentrate, where realistically, I think the best way to probably do it is to water it down and spread it out over, you know, half a year. But I love getting in there and just doing it all at once. Part of me has considered doing a longer format version of it, but, you know, that's not for now. That's a thought for another time. Is that my exhaust friend? You know, one of those exhaust people out there is not a car at all. It's a guy with a bike who I think has attached a ride-on lawnmower engine to his bike. And he also has like a weird chariot thing on the back. I don't know what he does, but he rides around here. I think that's a car though. It's always the weirdest car. It's always a souped up granny car. Like, it's never the Batmobile going down the street. Every time I see it, it's just some like 7-year-old Subaru. I don't know. Okay, sorry to all the Subaru owners. That was it. Okayama Kobo is just a Japanese bakery near us, which is great. We used to do brunch outside. Sometimes we still do it. Steve and I, there is a little parklet that they created in COVID, and they still have it, which is so good. I thought they were going to get rid of it after COVID, but hopefully it's just going to be permanent, because to me, I feel like they should have just done the whole road, the whole main street, because of the foot traffic that just that little section created. There's basically a crisscross, like 4-way intersection, and the part that leads to a back road that no one uses, they blocked it off with cinder blocks, and then they put AstroTurf and tables and chairs and umbrellas. And so many people from the businesses just go and have their lunch out there. It's created so much foot traffic for that little part of the road and like the main drag. And so I feel like they should have just done that to the whole thing. I'm glad they've kept it around at least, because it's just so nice to sit outside and like have your lunch. I love eating outside. I love dining al fresco. So that's where we would have brunch a lot of the time. We'd go and get our Japanese and take it there, or we just sometimes go and take our own food down there. Just nice, especially in 2020, because we were inside our place all the time, so we could actually go outside. A lot of people who, you know, just kind of alone, I guess, would end up at the parklet, and it just felt nice to be around people in a way where you didn't actually have to be close to them. So it was really nice. I'm glad they did that. That was a nice thing the city did. They should do more of that. If I got to say how my tax dollars were spent, that's more parklets everywhere. 2021, all of my formatting is complete for week 1 of Virtual Voyage 4, and we haven't even started yet. I love that for us. We officially kick off tomorrow, and it's going to be a great week of Inside Out and the art style of Sir Quentin Blake. It hasn't set in yet that I won't have a day off until July 12th. Maybe it will be okay. 4 weeks hard work, then weeks off. So Virtual Voyage 4 was our Lamplight cruise. It was Pixar themed, so we did a lot of Pixar movies, stories. Excuse me, my nose is running. And we did art styles. I would say of my favorites, if you're looking for my recommendations, Virtual Voyage 2, 4, and 6 have the body of work that I enjoyed the most. So as like the collective, everything that you end up doing in the course, if you look back on it, those ones I liked the most. I'm completely subjective because I also love those stories a lot too, but I mean, those would be the ones I'd recommend. If you wanted my recommendation, 1 is always great because it's the original, but I do feel like the original was still a bit of a learning curve, and then the rest kind of feel like they more belong. It's like the pilot of an episode of a TV series. The pilot is always the pilot, and then the series seems to start from after the pilot. So yeah, those are my recommendations. It was June 13th when I wrote this, and I wasn't going to have a day off until July 12th, so that was 1 day short of a month. That's not unusual. I usually have these really massive, like intense work seasons, and then I take time off after that. I tried more so now to spread it out as like having regular work weeks, but I'd still say it's 6 days a week and 1 day off, and then some weeks I just don't take the day off. Or a lot of the times the day off will be the day that I go and help Steve with his photography. So I really don't have the best balance at the moment, and trying to add dance on top of that has always been a little difficult, but I'm not unhappy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think before it used to be so much work because I just didn't know what was going to work out, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was really unhappy with all of that. Now I feel like if there's ever a time where I do just get really overwhelmed, I need a day off, like I do feel free to just give myself that, even in the face of like, oh, something's due on Friday. Am I going to take Thursday off? I'm taking Thursday off. I will do it on Friday. It will be done on Friday. So beforehand, I'd be like, no, I need to do it on Thursday. And then I'd do it on Thursday, and then I wouldn't have my day off. And on Friday, I'd go and find something else to do. So yeah, I think I'm actually okay with it, but sometimes it crosses my mind. Like random times I'll just think, what if I just gave up everything? This might be an adult thing. I don't know. Steve said he feels like this too sometimes. I think it's a creative thing. I think people who work in creative industries, or especially people that work for themselves, I think from time to time you just fantasize about giving it all up and doing a job that will cover your expenses Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and just doing that and seeing what life is like there. I actually don't think it would work for me. In fact, I know it won't work for me, but sometimes my brain fantasizes about that, which I think is interesting. 2022 is just a bunch of photos. This is something I do in my journal when I go on holidays. I would do photo strips because so much happens in every single day of a holiday, but I just feel like I can't write it all down in that small space. So I do photo strips, and this was the last day we spent at Disneyland Paris. Last year, Steve and I went to Paris and London. London because we were going to Paris, and why not go to London if you're going? But it was specifically to go to Paris, and it's not one of those things I love to admit because I'm a fan of Disney, but I'm not like a fan of Disney. But I was watching a show on YouTube. It had popped up on YouTube. YouTube gets me into so much trouble. Like, I'm only an art journaler because of YouTube. YouTube has changed the course of my life way too many times. YouTube played this video in the recommendations. It was called Dream and Shine Brighter, like Disneyland's 30th anniversary, something, blah, blah, blah. It was like a little parade stage show thing at Disneyland. It looked like a very cute, simple premise. It had very simple floats, and the dancers were all wearing like street clothes, but they were very interesting and different, and all the dancers just looked like they had like their tattoos out, they had beards. It was like, oh, it's a little more inclusive than I'm used to, and I thought it'd be like an interesting little show. So I watched it, and typically, like, to contextualize, a lot of Disneyland Paris entertainment I had not really been interested in before. For some reason, it just never really crossed my radar. Having since seen that, I've gone back and looked at it and thought, where has this been all my life? But anyway, so I watched it and I was bawling, like just bawling my eyes out. So moved. The music was so amazing. I loved the choreography. There were so many characters in it. It was just such a simple, classic, cleanly executed, very well done little presentation of kind of like Disney magic. And I'm just such a sucker for that. So if it makes me a nerd, whatever. But I just loved it. And I thought, I am really feeling some things about this. So I watched it again. And then I watched it again and again. I became a little obsessive about it, and I thought, oh, this is weird. Like, I'm not usually like this. I can be very obsessive about things, but for like a Disney show like this, I was like, there's something odd. Like, there's something weird going on inside me. I don't know what that is. and I felt like I have to go and see this in real life. Like I need to go and see it, but maybe I'm being crazy. So I showed Steve. Steve really loved it. He said he was getting a little emotional. He put it down to some like music trick that they do. Apparently there's something you can do with the music to make emotion well up inside of you, which I didn't realize. Apparently it's the same thing they do with worship music as well. Like there's a certain chord progression. I have no idea. I'm not musical, but he was watching it and he thought, wow, this is great. And I said, I think I need to go and see it. And he was like, let's go. Steve will always say, let's go somewhere, knowing full well he's not going to want to pay for that. So I was like, well, I mean, we could do like a quick little trip. And one of the perks of Steve being a cast member here is that he gets access into Disney parks around the world. Not Tokyo though. Shame, but Tokyo is pretty inexpensive anyway. But so he was like, well, if we go, I can just sign us in. We can, get in for free. That's one of the benefits of his job. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. I feel like maybe we should. So we planned this whole trip. We ended up going. This was the last day that we spent there, and we were in there all day just watching the same dream and shine brighter. I was bawling my eyes out when I was there. It was so much more of an experience to have it all happening around me and to watch other people watching it and getting that same reaction. There's just something very special about it. I don't know what it is. Like someone sprinkled an extra bit of special all over that show, because realistically, when I break it down into all its components, it's very simple. Like it's a very simple entertainment offering. Nothing overly extravagant, nothing so new or crazy, or there's no like technology we've never seen before. It's just very humble, just brilliant show. I just loved it. So we went and saw it. Ultimately, what I needed was to be re-inspired to commit to dancing again. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I had been so disillusioned by the efforts I'd made to dance, and I always believed like it will happen again, it's going to happen, but I just couldn't bear the fact that it was taking so long. I mean, I hadn't danced since 2015, like performed. I'd been dancing, for myself. I like dance in my room or go to Zumba, which I would consider like, some kind of dancing, but actually performing since 2015. I mean, at this point, it had been so long, and I just felt like I need to go and do it. I feel like this might inspire me to give me the push that I need to just be gung-ho about it and just go crazy. So there's actually another interesting part of the story. I think I'll give you like the Cliff's Notes versions of it, because the whole story is kind of boring. But so I went there and I was definitely re-inspired. Fun fact, and this is the little Cliff's Notes story. While I was there was an audition posted for parade dancers for Disneyland, and I had submitted for that audition thinking, great, this is the sign I need, it's gonna happen. Then they asked to come into an audition date while we were still in Paris and London. And I had emailed them being like, I'm not even in the country, can I do it on another day? And they were like, no, you have to be there for it to be considered. And I was like, this is actually insane. I am only here in Paris because I was so upset that I couldn't dance, that I needed to be inspired to dance. And now that I have an opportunity to go and do it, I can't do it because I'm in Paris. Like, the irony was so incredibly thick. I could not bear it. Steve was so upset for me. He was like, don't worry, it'll all work out. Anyway, it did all end up working out. I had a show reel that I could send over, and so we ended up working out something. And then I did end up booking the Christmas parade from that audition that I couldn't end up going to. So it all worked out in the end, but I just thought the irony, like, we can talk about it now because at the time, my goodness, I actually thought I was going to have a breakdown. But yeah, it all worked out in the end. I did end up going back to dancing for Christmas, and yeah, I haven't really been the same since. But I do credit a lot of that fire that I kind of regained for that purpose on going on that trip. I mean, I ended up putting myself through like twice the amount of Zumba classes that I would do. I started being a lot more intentional about small changes I would make to my lifestyle to be able to get into a healthier place so that I could fit into costumes easier, or let's just call a spade, be more marketable. Times have changed. There's actually there's more space now. pardon the pun. There's more space for dancers with larger bodies, but it's still not going to be as marketable as having a thinner body. So I'm just going to call that out for what I see it as. And I have decided that I'll try and make my body smaller so I can be more marketable. My choice. I don't expect anyone else to, side with that. But yeah, so I feel like that was the big push for me, and I'm really happy we went. And I loved the trip anyway. Steve and I had a great time, and I think I've documented all of my travel journal of that in a playlist on YouTube, so you can watch that whole travel journal come together and listen to all my stories there. But I do have to do a flip of it, so I'll finish that up and do a flip at some point. That was the last day we spent in Paris before we came home from that trip. And then 2023, present day, this was actually last week, so this is pretty recent. Had my Not Scary Farm audition today. I got a call back. It's next Wednesday, which just happened, and I'm thrilled to bits. I feel a little sore that I didn't get the Pride Cavalcade dancer spot, so I definitely needed this callback to redirect my focus and feelings. We did the audition on stage. It was so good to be quote unquote on stage again, an actual stage. I could feel the warmth of the light on my face and was transported back into my pre-car crash days. I'm praying, hoping, wishing that I get an offer for Not Scary Farm 50. So here's one of those things that I really don't want to have to read out loud because it's going to illuminate a thought process that I have. It's just kind of hard for me to share, especially if you're someone that has worked with me at Disneyland, or you know anything about casting and being a dancer and all those kinds of crazy things. There's a lot of context that goes into it, but all I have to say is nothing bad happened. These were all my own personal feelings that were happening at the time. And an even crazier turn of events happened after this, which we'll get to. But I had the audition. It was at Not Scary Farm, for Not Scary Farm, which is like their haunted holiday season thing. It's for Halloween, but they do like haunted houses and mazes, and they have scare actors all over the park. And there's a couple of entertainment offerings that they're auditioning for. So I went to audition for that. I felt very good. I felt very happy and confident to be there. But before that, there's been a period of time since I last performed at Disneyland where I have been not cast in anything, and that is completely normal. So just to contextualize, that's normal. That happens to a lot of people. The reality is there's just so many people who want to dance and perform and sing and act and perform, but there's only so many roles. And so when you've got a huge roster of people, you kind of have to roll those people over and offerings go out accordingly. And I do believe that Disneyland do a pretty good share of kind of, offering it around and making sure that everyone kind of gets a fair go. So I'm pretty new. I had done Christmas, I did my Disney 100 cavalcade, and so it was kind of my season to take off and then come back later, I would assume. But you never really know how these things go. And I was just struggling because I had such a good time at Christmas and over the Disney 100 cavalcade. It really changed my lifestyle. I was so happy to be socializing with people so much more. I loved performing so often. It was a lot of extra work to kind of blend all those routines together, but I really, really loved it. And to be honest, I had that taste of what I've been missing for so long that when it stopped, I got very depressed very quickly. And I could have anticipated that, but I actually didn't anticipate it stopping. I don't know why. It just never crossed my mind. I thought, no, I'm just going to go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Because that's what happened when I was a dancer straight out of high school. Obviously, I'm very different now, but out of high school, it just never really stopped. I thought, that great, this is happening again. I'm just going to keep going and going and going until I decide to stop. So that didn't happen, and I wasn't quite ready to face how that felt. And I know a lot of people were kind of with me for that experience as that happened, and it's just not been the easiest thing for me to deal with. I have tried to be as gracious as I could be, but also respect how I feel about it, because I also don't want to tell myself that I can't feel sad, because I need to feel it to get through it, and then I can feel the other things. I think a lot of what I was struggling with before and why it kind of culminated in like, let's go to Paris to be re-inspired, was because I would suppress so much of what I was feeling. I used to feel so guilty for wanting to be a dancer again so badly. I didn't want to admit that I was so hurt by it, and that I was in so much pain about being so rejected from opportunities, and I just didn't want any of it to be real. I think I'm happier now to deal with the realities of it and to accept it all, but it still is difficult for me. Like I can't get over the fact that it feels difficult. And there's only so much I can share about Disneyland, obviously, for obvious reasons. But nothing bad happened. It's all good. This is just part and parcel of how it all works. And so for the time period that I've been uncast from any of the entertainment offerings, there are random little special events that would pop up. And so I'd always hoped that like over the months, I would get to do one of these little special events, and I would see them pop up, and then I wouldn't be a part of it, and I'd be like, oh, okay, hopefully there's another one soon. Then it would pop up, and then I wouldn't be a part of it. And then we had a reevaluation, which is basically like everyone has a chance to go in and kind of like re-audition, just to put all your skills out there and be like, hey, I'm here and this is what I do. And especially for people who aren't cast in anything, it's a good way to get yourself back out there. And so I had gone to that, and I was like, great, now that we've done that, maybe one of these opportunities will come up. And then unfortunately, the next thing that happened after that was the Pride night, which is just a couple of nights. Like these are all very, very small things that happen. But when you're not doing anything, they're like your only option. You're like, oh, I really hope I get to do this. And a lot of the time you don't even know they're happening. They just happen, and you're like, oh, there was an opportunity, and I guess that happened and it's gone. But okay, well, what's going to happen next? So for me it could have been anything. It could have been like walking down the street waving, and I would have been so upset to miss out on it because I'm just greedy. I just want to do everything. Facts are facts, America. I just want to do all of it. I want to be in all of it. I want to be cast in everything. I think a lot of us feel like that. It's a sad thing to admit. Like, you just don't want to have to admit that because everyone tries so hard to cover that fact up. But I'm grown, I can admit it. So the Pride night thing, also it just was like, it looked so much fun. I feel like that's why it made me feel even a little bit more sore about it, because I was like, oh wow, this would have been amazing. I loved watching it, so I was like, it's great. And I'm happy for all of my friends that got to do all of those opportunities. It really has nothing to do with anything bad. I think it's just a normal feeling. And it's something that I forget. Like, I did forget about this over the years that I wasn't a dancer, that there were times where I wanted to do things that I didn't get to do, and that it sucked a little bit, and it hurt a little bit, and it hurt your feelings, and you have to get through it and get over it and move on. I had forgotten about all of that. When you're out of something, you just tend to fantasize about all of the best parts of it. I completely forgot about all the worst parts. So I'm getting used to that again, and I think I'm accepting it a little bit more graciously than I did when I was younger, which is nice. But yeah, like I said, I needed the audition to kind of like refocus my feelings, because it can get a little hectic inside your brain when you're auditioning a lot and you're putting yourself out there a lot and you're being quote unquote rejected. Not picked is kind of the same thing as rejected. It sounds nicer to say you weren't picked, but ultimately you're just not being chosen. And sometimes your brain, all the time really, your brain wants to rationalize why that didn't happen. And it's never a good thing. Like, I'm gonna start telling myself I wasn't chosen because I was too gorgeous and too talented. Hopefully the positive reinforcement will like manifest into something healthier. But my first thoughts, and we've discussed this on the Playtest Patreon last 5 years episode, my first thought is you're just too fat. You're too fat to be cast in that. There's no costume for you. You're gonna look like you ate the person next to you. And like, these are horrible things to think, I know that, but these are things that are deeply rooted in things I'd heard when I was 19, 20 years old. And I was told I was, I didn't look like the nicest kid in town when I wanted to do hairspray, and that, go and get a haircut, shave your beard, lose 20 pounds, like do all these things. And you would do all these things because that's what the casting directors are telling you to do. And then you'd put yourself in front of them, and they're like, I had one casting director, and I don't know if he would ever watch this, but if you're watching this, I have never forgotten that you did this. He, I was asking to be, and I was pretty bold and assertive too, so maybe he was just putting me in my place, but I was like, oh, I really want to do this specific shit because I want to do this. Oh, I'm really outing it now. I want to do this specific shit because I want to do this specific show. And I was like, I think this is really what I want to do. Let me put my preference out there. And that was, I was kind of met with rejection at that point. But then another time, like just after we'd finished a run, an office run, he had come up to me and was like, wonderful work, like it was great, I loved watching you, we just need to work on this, and like put his hands out to my waist and like made this slimming motion. And I was like, who on earth are you to tell me that? Like, I mean, I know you're my casting director, like you should probably, I guess if that's honest, like, I mean, at least I can deal with that, but it was just so, I just felt so proud of myself for just doing such a good job. And like to get that as feedback, it's like, you're great to watch, but you're fat. It was like, oh, it was just so gut wrenching. Anyway, I think I cried and chain smoked outside for like 5 days, but it was what it was. Yeah, he just hadn't, he also told me that I couldn't be a dance captain because of my weight, because I would be a bad example to my cast because I wasn't healthy. I have to say, I won't do this, but if I could put a picture in there of what I actually looked like at the time, I was not fat. Like I just didn't have muscle definition. I think I was just like a little bit of a soft body. I mean, I look like a man. I have big baller thighs. Like, anyway, but he'd been doing that since I was 20 years old. He always just had an issue with my weight. So a lot of those experiences have formed this idea in me that, you know, I'm just too fat. No, when I was too thin, I was still too fat. So a lot of the time, the first reaction that I have to not being chosen is, you're just too fat. You need to, you don't look like the nicest kid in town. You have to shave. You look too old. You look too this, you look too that. And you want to tell your brain to not obsess about those things. But if you're just got months and months to wait and you're watching all these opportunities go by and you're like, why can't I do any of those? Your brain just comes up with every single option, like every single negative thing you could think about. And I was telling Steve, like, it's just getting to the point where it's just hurting my own feelings so badly that I'm actually starting to feel crazy. And he was like, you know, this is part and parcel of it. You have to remember that thick skin that you had before. You have to remember that people have said this to your face and you've been like, whatever, I'm gonna go do what I want. Like, that's a part of that conditioning that sometimes you have to have in this industry. And it's not right, it's not great. Like, people shouldn't do that, but if it's reality, like, you have to deal with it. So, you know, I've been working on that, to be gracious about, you know, the way the events unfold, but also to know that, you know, maybe there is some truth to it, but these days no one is really going to tell you that you're too fat. I think we've gotten to a point where it might be true, but you're absolutely not allowed to say it, which is kind of worse. I actually wish they would tell me. So, you know, I take back everything I said about that casting director. You were right. You should have told me. In the end, I was telling myself it was because I was too fat, I was too old, I didn't look right. And you can tell yourself weird things too, like, oh, maybe I'm too tall, which is like, what can you do about that? I'm not gonna go and dance out on my knees just to be shorter. Like, it's just weird things your brain will say. But when you get picked, suddenly all of those things don't exist anymore. You're not too fat, you're not too short, you're not too old, you're perfect, you were chosen, it's all worked out. So that's where I think it can feel crazy sometimes, and you really feel like you're just going nuts. So that's where I was feeling last week, and I needed that audition to go in there and feel confident, but I was also a little worried because I was like, well, if for any reason they're not looking for me and I get cut, what am I gonna feel like? I'm already in a kind of a bad place. Like, I gotta be strong if I get cut. I just gotta walk out confident and just be like, get in my car, go home. Be upset at home. Anyway, I made it through the end of the audition. I was very happy with how it was going. I felt very confident. I saw a lot of people that I worked with before, and so I was really happy to be surrounded by a lot of familiar faces and get to catch up there. It was just great. It was a really wonderful day. It went long. There were a lot more people than I think they were expecting, so then they had to put on a callback. So it really should have all finished that day, and then they should have made their offers like a few days after that. That's important for this next part of the story. So they were like, well, can you come to a callback next week, which was a couple of days ago? And I said, yes, I'll come. They just wanted to see some extra stuff, but essentially, like, these were the final group of people they were going to consider for what they were going to put on for Halloween. And I said, I'll come to the callback. Anyway, Steve and I went to up north to a family event, and on the way back, I got a call from Disney offering me a special event. So all of that stuff I was saying before, you know, what I was writing down on Wednesday suddenly was very irrelevant on Saturday, and I was very happy. So I will be over at Disneyland for the 68th birthday. Just a day, just gonna go be there. I'm not quite sure what the event is, but I know I'll be there, and I'll be there with Steve, so that'll be great. But I think it'll be our first time working together. So if you're around, check us out and enjoy the day. But that was something that happened on Saturday, and I was all of a sudden so like, oh, everything's fine, I'm not crazy anymore, which made me feel even a little bit more crazy, knowing just how quickly I could switch. And then on Monday, I got another offer. You know, when it rains, it pours. to be at Disneyland for Halloween. And it was so confusing because I, you know, obviously went from feeling a certain type of way to now feeling very like overwhelmed with these offers and the opportunities and the possibilities that were coming up. And I felt bad because I had already told Knott's Berry Farm, like, I am available for all these dates. And if I had accepted this offer from Disney, I wouldn't be available for all those dates, which was literally something they said, like, don't audition if you're not available for these dates. So I felt like I've already kind of like half made a commitment over here because, you know, it's not fair to say, no, I'm fully available, and then be like, I'm not available anymore. It happens, it's life, it happens. Like it's a terribly great situation to be in when you have to choose between options. This actually happened my first contract. I was offered for Universal Studios Japan and Tokyo Disney Resort, and I had to choose between those two. Ultimately, I chose Tokyo Disney Resort. Always wondered what would have happened if I chose Universal, what my life would have been like. Obviously, we'll never know, but yeah, my timeline split there. I'm sure there's a multiverse version of me that did Universal Studios that maybe isn't as crazy. But he doesn't do art journaling, so forget about him. The me in that universe. I'm not whoever took that job, like whatever, it's fine. I'm sure they were great. But yeah, so then I was like, well, can I have a few days to wait? And I was honest, I was like, I am being considered for something else, and I just think it's fair that I give that an opportunity to play out before I make this decision, just because of the way that I had approached everything, which just sucked because I was like, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Like, I would love to do both. I am that greedy. I would do both. I'd be working from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. the next morning if I could, but both of them were events at night. So then I went to the callback on Wednesday, just a couple of days ago, had a great time. They didn't keep us there for as long as I thought they would keep us there. They didn't need to see all the other things that they were saying they needed to see last week. So I was like, they must have a pretty good idea of what they want to do at this point. And also last week, so here's like another little piece to where I was feeling like even more crazy, because at the audition, they were like, all right, so for this one particular thing we're considering, the guys would have to be topless. And I was like, I mean, I don't have a problem getting my kid off, but I don't know if you're looking for this type of a body, and I'm just going to assume that you weren't, just to keep myself a little bit safer. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it. So I got online, I ordered myself the most revealing little outfit. I looked like I was auditioning for the Broadway Bears version of Chicago. But so yeah, when we went there, I mean, we're all basically stripped down to nothing when we did our audition. And then they were like, all right, boys, take your tops off. So I was out and just basically booty shorts doing the whole thing. I was very confident, really feeling myself. I had my Sally Hansen makeup legs all over me. So I was a little bit orange, but I felt like that looked better than white. And yeah, I gave it a good shot. I was really proud of myself, but that's when the realism started setting in. I was like, yeah, I just, from what I've heard from the casting director, I was like, I don't think this is the type of body they're looking for. As confidently as I might sell it, I don't think this is it. So I was just hoping that, you know, another opportunity might work out. And yeah, I got home and had an email an hour later for Knott's Scary Farm, and I was like, this is crazy. Now I have to choose. I chose Knott's Scary Farm purely based on the fact that I had already committed when I went to the audition, and they were very specific, like, you have to be available. And he even said, like, if we make these offers and suddenly, like, you just don't want to do it, like, it doesn't look well for you. And I haven't worked with Knott's Berry Farm before, and I was like, I really want to put a good first impression out there. And I really wanted to do it as well. I think dancing wise, this show really suits like how I dance and what I enjoy dancing. So I do know it was the right decision to make, but I just felt terrible because for so many months I've been wanting, and to go back to Disneyland, because that's all I've known since I've been back. It's just been at Disneyland. And this is just how the industry works. This is just part and parcel of what it is to be a dancer. And like I said, it was a great problem to have. I told Disneyland the truth. I just couldn't commit to all of those dates with this offer. So, unfortunately not, but hopefully I can do something else there later in the year. And who knows, it's going to be the same process it's always been. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do know that I'm very, very excited to go to Knott's Scary Farm. I'm very excited, also a little nervous. I am so scared of like spooky things. You know, when we do our Halloween stuff, our whimsy ween, like I couldn't even do Halloween because it was too scary. It had to be whimsy ween. Yeah, this show is up on a balcony it's called a scare zone. So it's called the Goring, I think the actual name of the show is the Goring 20s Balcony Burlesque. And where the tiger tail dances. I'm really not quite sure. There's like a whole backstory on it and everything, but it's very Prohibition era New York, I'm guessing. It's very Great Gatsby looking. And the scare zone is like people are running around scaring people, and we're up on a balcony doing a show. I think it's 4 times during the night. And so the show looks really fun from what I've seen on YouTube, but there's scary people everywhere. Like, I was genuinely just a little nervous. Excuse me, my nose is running. What am I gonna do going to work, having to like run away from all these scary people? I would never go in a haunted house. You couldn't pay me enough to go in a haunted house. And now I'm gonna have to face all of this every day I go to work. It's a conundrum. I'm gonna have to like desensitize myself to it or condition myself or something. I'm gonna have to watch more scary things on YouTube just to, I mean, I hope it doesn't flood my algorithm, but I was genuinely telling Steve, like, I'm so excited to go, but like all these spooky girls, like they can't come up to me when I'm trying to walk into work because I will have a panic attack and run away. So it's a lot. If you're one of the scare actors at Not Scary Farm, please leave me alone. Do not come up to me in your makeup. You're gonna ruin my dreams. Living out yours. It's gonna be a whole thing. I'm sure by the end of it, I'll be a little spooky girl, but yeah, I'm a little apprehensive about that. So the rest of it should be great. I'm super excited. I think it's going to be amazing. And I will, of course, share every video and photo I can find of the experience for you on Instagram, because that's what I love to do. And I put my audition number in there as number 44. It's a funny story. I'm very superstitious about all the numbers I get at auditions. And every time I get a number like 27, 28, 29, like birthday numbers from my family, favorite numbers like 5, my brother's favorite number 8, like it can be all that. It just has to be myself or my family. Those types of numbers, very superstitious. I'm like, wow, this is gonna work out for me. Has never worked out for me. Every single time I've gotten a number that I did not care about, or I was like, 44, that's nothing, I got the job. So now I'm gonna be completely superstitious in the other way now. If I ever get it, I'm gonna literally look in line and be like, am I 27th in line? No, I need to go to the back. I need to be somewhere out of my favorite number zone because, yeah, something spooky is going on there. But I'm not even a numbers person, but I did pick up on that. I was like, I've been to these auditions thinking, this is the one. I got number 27. Like, it's gonna work out. Absolutely not. Cut first round. Oh, wow. Being a dancer really brings out my crazy. I mean, I guess not. I think I'm always like that, but I guess I'm just more open with it now. That has been June 13th, the last 5 years. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed watching me work through the journal as we put that together. I know it's super chatty. These are all super chatty in that Playtest Patreon 3 bundle as well. I love to share my stories with you and also to set the time aside to very intentionally talk about these stories because you know, what is all the journal for if I can't dive back into it and relive the experiences? Like I said, the 5-year journal is my favorite. I'm excited to start my new one next year. I'll be looking out for the sale when it goes on sale for Hobonichi. I'll be getting the A6 again because I do want to have that little collection that all look the same. And yeah, I think hopefully I have the same visceral reaction to these memories when I read them back 30 years from now. I think that is the most exciting part for me, is that every time I dive back into it, I kind of know what I was thinking. I know where it was. Some things I'm worried that if they're really simple entries that I might actually forget the context of all of it, you know, when too many years pass. But it seems like I've got a pretty good handle on these 5 years. So, you know, if I ever forget, maybe I'll just go back to these videos and be like, oh yeah, that's what I meant. Although I can't imagine there being 365 of these episodes, but who knows? That's how many options I have to make for this journal. So, and we have another 5 years to get around to when I would start making them for the next one. Who knows if YouTube will even be a thing at that point? What if the whole back history of YouTube is gone by that point? Don't say that. I said that. Like, don't you say that. No, I'm saying it. Oh, I don't even know. A lot's changed in the last 5 years, and I'm sure a lot will change in the next 5 years as well. So I'll leave you with that. A somber thought. No, I'm really happy. Thank you so much also for being along the ride for my dance journey. I hope the extra context is explaining a lot of why I think certain things and why, you know, certain things happen the way they are. If I can stress one thing, My own personal feelings about what happens as I'm being cast or uncast or auditioning or not auditioning, those are my certain personal feelings about it. For the most part, the industry that I entered last year is very different from the industry that I left back in 2015. A lot has changed since then, and a lot actually makes a lot more sense, and it is a lot more inclusive and a lot more diverse than I've ever seen it before. So I do give a lot of credit for where it's going and how it's going, and it is just human nature to want everything you want and to be a little bratty when you don't get it. I contain all of those feelings to me and my journal and my husband and my friends when I vent about them. But realistically, there's actually nothing going wrong. That is just the way that life works, and those are the ways that I like to deal with it, just to get the stories out. And you know, they make for a fun reading when you're actually in a good place. You can look back at them and think, wow, I was crazy last week. I'm completely sane now. Oh, wow, that was revealing. All right, I'll see you again soon next week. Hopefully, see you later. Bye. Have a great time.